first problem, we want to isolate this. So to get this by itself, I'm going to add 2 to the opposite side. You're taking this down if you're in front of me. 1 plus 2 is 3. Now, opposite of taking the square root of something is squaring it. So on both sides, I'm going to square it. And the reason I do that is on the left-hand side, the square root and the square cancel. I bring down x plus 5, and 3 squared is 9. I'm going to move 5 to the opposite side, and we have x equals 4. But just because I get an answer doesn't mean that that answer is actually a solution to this problem. Grab your graphing calculator, please. You're going to plug this in with me simultaneously. So when we plug this in, I have square root. Again, I'm plugging in 4. So I have 4 plus 5. I have to use the arrow to move in back of it, subtract 2, and I want an answer of 1. I get an answer of 1. That means this is a solution. Okay? We're going to move on right now to the next one. Write down the next equation, please. Write down the next equation. Okay? So, again, whatever you do to one side, you have to keep the equation balanced by doing it to the opposite side. I'm going to square both sides. So I have x subtract 7 equals x plus 1. Okay, so here we go. So I'm going to start by moving the x's to the same side. Subtract the x, subtract the x. X minus x is 0. And this is what I'm left with. Negative 7 equals 1. Negative 7 equals 1. Is that a true statement? Does negative 7 equal 1? Not a true statement, so I write no real solution. Okay, we're going to go on right now to another problem. So here's our next problem. Okay, please write down the square root of x plus 5 equals 5 minus the square root of x. So this is where it gets a little complicated. I'm going to teach you a little trick to not showing all of your work, but still having the ability to achieve the right answer. So whatever we do to one side, we're going to do to the other side. So we're going to square both sides. On the left-hand side, the square root and the square cancel. I'm left with x plus 5. Now this is where mistakes are made. On the right-hand side, students often think they're going to distribute to get 25 plus x. This means take this quantity and write it twice. So 5 minus the square root of x times 5 minus the square root of x. Now just a side note, if you did not know this, if you didn't know this, here's an example. If I take the square root of 2 times the square root of 3, if you didn't know this, you're able to do this with multiplying and dividing. 2 times 3, the square root of 2 times the square root of 3 is the square root of 6, okay? If you didn't know that, this is a little side note here. So just the same, the square root of 2 times the square root of 2 is the square root of 4, which is 2. So if you take the exact same thing, the square root of some quantity times the square root of the exact same quantity, you're left with the original quantity. Like I could choose any number. Like the square root of 3 times the square root of 3 is the square root of 9, which is just 3. So whatever that exact quantity was, when you take it times itself as a square root, you get that original quantity. Keep that in mind. Let's go back now to the right-hand side. So I'm going to FOIL this. Remember, FOIL is front, outside, inside, last. When I multiply the fronts, I end up with 25. Now I'm going to multiply the backs. So I did the front. I'm going to multiply the last next. Negative times a negative I know is a positive. Again, I did the front. A negative times a negative is a positive. And now here we go again. We have the exact same quantity. So just like I told you, the square root of 2 times the square root of 2 is just 2. So the square root of x times the square root of x is just x. Now here's another shortcut. You ready? I'm going to combine these in my head. So when I multiply here, I have negative the square root of x times 5. So that's negative 5 square roots of x. And here is 5 times negative square root of x. If you're a visual learner, that's negative 5 square roots of x and negative 5 square roots of x. I'm not multiplying them, I'm combining them. I'm adding these two negatives to end up with negative 10 square roots of x. You're making sure you have all notes here. I want to get this by itself. So I'm going to do inverse operation. Opposite of adding 25 is subtracting 25. Opposite of adding x is subtracting x. So on the right-hand side, my x's are wiped away, and my 25s are wiped away. And I'm left with negative 10 square root of x equals, now x minus x is 0, and negative 25 and positive 5 is negative 20. There's a couple different things we could do here. There's more than one way. I recognize that 20 and 10 easily divide, so I'm going to divide by negative 10, and I get 2 equals the square root of x. I want to square both sides. 2 squared is 4. And now I need to grab the calculator to ensure, is this the right answer? I did all the math right. I'm confident in my math, but I'm not confident that this answer will work. So I'm going to come back up here. Forget about what you see in purple. We're looking at the original answer. Square root, and I'm substituting in 4. 4 plus 5, that's on the left-hand side. So the left-hand side equals 3 when I substitute in a value of 4. On the right-hand side, I have 5 subtract the square root, again, substitute in 4. The left-hand side and the right-hand side equal 3. That means 4 is the correct answer. Okay, here we go. Next one. Please write down example number 4. This is example number 4. Okay, so I want to move one of the square roots to the opposite side. And let's move the one that's negative. So I want to take this, it's negative, and I want to add it to the opposite side. Now on the left-hand side, I have the square root of x plus 3. On the right-hand side, these aren't like terms. I can't combine them. This goes back to exactly what we just did in the last problem, but instead of just having an x underneath the square roots, we have a little bit more. So let's square both the left and the right side. On the left-hand side, the square root and the square cancel, and I'm left with x plus 3. On the right-hand side, I have x plus the square root of x minus 1 and x plus the square root of x minus 1. Why did I write it twice? Because that's what this means. Take this quantity and square it. Write it down twice. Okay, so we are going to start here. We're going to start to FOIL. So I'm going to put F-O-I-L. These two I'm going to combine and I'm going to do in my head. Let's start with the fronts. 1 times 1 is 1, and I'm going to cross out the F. Now I'm going to do the last next. Now remember, let's go back to this thought. The square root of x times the square root of x is simply x. You take the same thing times itself, the square root of some quantity, times the square root of the exact same quantity is that quantity. So when I take this and I multiply it for the last times last, guess what I'm left with? Exactly what's in parentheses. The square root no longer is there. When I take this quantity times itself, I'm left with just what's inside of the square root. I've done the front and I've done the last. Now I'm going to do the O and the I in my head, and I think you can do the same. When I multiply here, on the inside, I have 1 times, positive 1 times this quantity. And if you're a visual learner, I'll write this down. So positive 1. And then when I multiply the outsides, I have another positive 1 times this quantity. We are combining them. So 1 times that quantity plus 1 times that quantity, there's 2 quantities of x minus 1. Make sure you have this all down. You're not just watching. I want to keep this by itself and move everything to the opposite side. So inverse operation, I'm going to subtract 1. And then I'm going to add 1. And I'm going to subtract x. Inverse operation, subtract the x, add the 1, subtract the 1. So the only thing I have left on the right-hand side is 2 times the quantity x minus 1. Now I need to combine like terms on the left-hand side. Positive x and negative x, they cancel. And negative 1 and positive 1 cancel. The only thing I'm left with is 3. Now on the last problem we did, we had a 10 and a 20. I'm going to flip back so you can see that. Notice in the last problem I said there's more than one way to do this. See how we just divided by 10? I divided by 10 because I knew that 20 divided by 10 is a nice number. Is 3 divided by 2 a nice number? Yes or no? Yeah. So we have another way we can do this. Put parentheses around both. As long as you do the same thing to both sides, we keep the equation balanced. Let's square both sides. 3 times 3 is 9, and now we're going to write down this quantity twice. And if you're wondering what we're doing, our whole goal is to find an answer for x that makes this math statement true. So I write the quantity down twice. And now 2 times 2 is 4. And just like I shared above, the square root of a quantity times the square root of that exact same quantity is itself. So guess what? The square root of x minus 1 times the square root of x minus 1 is simply x minus 1. Please distribute the 4 at this time and let's solve. It is okay to have a fraction. Does this mean this is automatically answered? It does not. So we're going to take that answer of 13 over 4, we're going to go back up to the very top, and we're going to plug this in. Here we go. Up to the very top. You ready? So I'm plugging this in. I'm not having to do the mental math. So grab that calculator. When I plug it in, because it's a fraction, I put in parentheses. 13 divided by 4 plus 3. Subtract square root, in parentheses, 13 divided by 4, subtract 1. What do I want for an answer? If this is a true statement, I want the left side to equal 1. So wherever there was an x, I substitute in the answer I got, which was 13 over 4. Does it equal 1? It does. That means this is the correct answer. Is that example 4 or example 5? Thanks, guys. Here's example number 5. Example number 5. Other side, David, please.
So I bring a chair?
Yeah. Give me 1 second. Here's our next problem. Okay, you ready? Here's our next one. 3x minus 2 equals 1 plus 2x minus 3. Please write it down. Whatever you do to one side, you want to do to the other side to keep things balanced. So I'm going to start right away by putting parentheses and squaring both the left side and the right side. On the left-hand side, the square root and the square cancel, and I bring down 3x minus 2. Oz, make sure you're paying attention so you can help. On the right-hand side, the big misconception is students are going to go 1 squared plus, nope, can't do that. Write this quantity twice.
Don't say it cancels out, it just goes to 1. As you go further,
Okay, now I'm going to write down FOIL. So I'm going to start with the fronts. 1 times 1 is 1. I've taken care of that. Now when I multiply the last, so a positive times a positive, I know is going to be a positive. When I take the square root of this times the square root of this, they're the exact same thing. Can anybody tell me what we get? 2x minus 3. I've done the front and I've done the last. Now I'm going to do the O and the I. So I have one group of this thing plus another group. So 1 times this quantity, if you're a visual learner, there's one group of it. And then I have another one group. So how many groups do I have when I combine them? How many groups do I have when I combine? You had one when I did the inside, and I have one when I do the outside, so I have a total of 2 groups. 1 times this quantity plus 1 times this quantity. So this is my FOIL, and I'm going to set this to 3x minus 2. Now I want to get this by itself, so I want to move everything else to the opposite side. So I'm going to subtract 1, I'm going to add 3, I'm going to subtract 2x. So those are inverse operations. I have 2 times the quantity 2x minus 3. And now on the left-hand side, I've got to combine everything. Negative 2 and negative 1 is negative 3. Negative 3 and positive 3 is 0. So there's no constants. And 3x minus 2x is 1x. Share with me. Now, although we could, I don't like working with fractions. Why would you choose to square both sides versus dividing by 2? If I divide both sides by 2, what's going to be over here? A fraction, 1/2 x. I don't want to work with a fraction. It's not pretty. I'm going to square both sides. So I'm going to write this down twice. I'm going to write this down twice.
You see how this is positive? So you're doing.
On the left-hand side, 1 times 1 is 1. X times x is x squared. On the right-hand side, 2 times 2 is 4. And what do you get when you take this quantity times itself? 2x minus 3. So I'm going to distribute the 2. 1x squared equals 8x minus 12. And now I always suggest we move things to the side that has the x squared. So I'm going to be lazy here. Opposite of adding 8x is minusing 8x. Opposite of subtracting 12 is adding 12. I've moved these over. I have nothing left on the right-hand side. We sometimes can factor to solve, but it doesn't always work. We can always use the quadratic formula. 1 times 12 is 12. Do we know two numbers that are the same sign? 6 and 2 are the positive 6 and positive 2 or negative 6, negative 2? Good, awesome. So let's write those down as factors. X minus 6 and x minus 2. Because the leading coefficient is 1, simple enough. Set each of these equal to 0, and I get x equals 2 and x equals 3. Oh, sorry, x equals 2 and x equals 6. Then grab your graphing calculator. Let's go up to the very beginning. Go up to the very beginning here. Are you ready? Here we go. So I'm going to plug in, you said the answers were 6 and 2 when we solved. So square root, I'm going to try 6 first. There's 6 minus 2. That's my left-hand side. And now I'm going to try my right-hand side. Again, I'm plugging in 6 right now, and I'm testing 6. Does the left side equal the right side when I substitute in 6? That doesn't work for me. Now, did I plug in something wrong? I did. I meant to put a 6 here. Let's try this again. The square root of 3 times 6, subtract 2, that's a left. 1 plus the square root of 2 times 6, subtract 3. Okay, both times I've substituted 6. Does the left side equal the right side? It does. So I know 6 is a legit answer. Now I'm going to try 2. Grab a calculator and do 2 right now. Don't wait for me to do it. Works both ways. That means both 6 and 2 are solutions. Okay, are you ready? You're racing me on this one. You get a 1-minute head start. You can get help from people around you. Your goal is to beat me. 1-minute head start. This is your problem. Ready? Get set. Begin. 1-minute head start.
What can you take out of all one number? You know what? Both terms are going to have
On the right-hand side? Yeah, all right.
they're both going to be, one's going to be positive, one's going to be negative.
Got another 30 seconds.
Okay, which one's going to be?
Oh, he won you over. He said I was trying to steal student tutors.
Alright. Alright. So,
Know myself how long
that's the goal. So,
So I'm going to start by multiplying the fronts. 3 times 3 is 9. Multiplying the backs, a negative times a negative is a positive. And then write down the quantity 2x. Now I'm going to do the inside and the outside. This is negative 3. Negative 3 times the square root of 2x. This is negative 3 times the square root of 2x. So negative 3 is negative 6. Does anybody that's in front of me have questions on how I got to this part? Can I help you with any of that? This may be the confusing part for you. Is anybody confused about this? Yes. Okay, so when I multiply this, do you see how this is a negative 1? So negative 1 times 3 is negative 3, and we have the square root of 2x. Here's 3 times negative 1. So we have negative 3 again times the square root of 2x. So negative 3 and negative 3 combine to give you negative 6 square roots of 2x. Is that okay? Okay, I want to get this by itself.
Does it hurt? Can you reset for me?
So in this case, I would not square the left and right side. I mean, I could, but I wouldn't choose to because I believe it's just as easy to divide by negative 6. Now, to get rid of the square root, where I'm going to square both sides, I have 1 equals 2x divided by 2, and I have 1/2 is what I believe the answer is. Now, is that the correct answer? We got to go back and check. So I have the square root of 2 times 1/2 plus 3. That's the left-hand side. Let's check the right-hand side. 3 subtract the square root of 2 times 1/2. Oh, I wrote it down wrong. Divided by 2. So this is my left. This is my right. Since the left side equals the right side, I know 1/2 is the correct answer. Okay?